action to occur, whether someone downloads and use actively, routinely, or purchase as the evidence of demand. So there are stages where emphasis on sales may not be as big, depending on which fund or which stage you're in, or maybe emphasis of product market fit, because a lot of people always talk about, you wanna be able to know, like Series A, that's with the assumption that you know who the audience is, the target market is, and you know who is not, right? So you really need the funding to really fuel growth. Sometimes early on, we have educated guesses, but those educated guesses are possibly wrong.
Yeah, can I ask a question
yes.
as well related to this? First of all, there is no antidote to a no. I mean, I don't know if Pedro could be like, yo, this is how to get a yes from me. I don't even know if that would stand the test of time necessarily.
Yeah.
But another slide that's in the deck, an aspect of the fundraise, and I don't actually know, but I would be curious to know what it is the actual go-to-market strategy. Yeah. When you talked about, proven in this market, talk about how you got there, talk about how you got in the room, and then because I think this is less about that and more about your go-to-market strategy and how you're articulating it, and if it's translated into like a fast, high-scaling, profitable business in that specific market.
Sure. So the strategy was you start with the low-hanging fruit, right? The concept is learn the business, build your team, find a deal, manage your project. The manager project is technology. So that was being built in the infrastructure. So that was the first thing we did. Download the project management, build the project management, download the app. Hey guys, if you're new to the business, you're in the business, use this app. Simple. The other part of it then was the education, right? The education can be done one time and then rolled out nationwide. So when we first went to market, with education and project management. That's all we pitched. Market by market, we then went to vendors. Hey vendor, I'm going to promote your business for free. Sign up right now, let's do it right now. So we literally had to do vendor sign up one conversation at a time. From vendor sign up, we only had to do it once. 2 vendors in each category. I have an entire vendor that's built out. 80 people, right?
Yeah.
So I go to 5 or 6 investment clubs, a couple networking events. 2 months, I got all vendors built out.
Okay.
Right? That's where the sales team comes in. The most difficult part was the wholesalers posting deals.
Yeah.
And things turn.
Yeah.
So I got to get 10 wholesalers, and I'll be like, can I post your deal?
Yeah.
And then I have to have someone, when the deal sells, take it off the site, because you won't do it, because you're working on the next one.
Yeah.
So they had back office, take it down, post it, take it out, post it.
Yeah.
So the boots on the ground was the vendors and the deals, right? Because the education, I could talk to you and then roll it out nationwide, et cetera, and you wouldn't be necessarily to the wiser, low-hanging fruit. The thing that most people are coming for beyond the education is now I need to build my team.
Yeah.
Well, if you log on to 360 in Cleveland, it's only the national title company, insurance, whatever, that's it. Because we don't have the resources to build out the vendors at the electricians and plumber level unless we go to conferences, unless we get someone to start going out and building that on our behalf. So that's where, when I say we hit the glass ceiling, we've tried marketing and social media, like literally, like I know there's a 2-second extension span. Hey vendors, we tried that on Facebook, Instagram. We saw the impressions, the conversion was exceptionally low.
Yeah.
Tried it on LinkedIn. Hey vendors, I want to spotlight your business. Some, got pretty decent response. But coming in and asking for money, the biggest need, the technology piece is slow, but we can handle it, right?
Yeah.
The biggest piece that is crippling 360's growth is our ability to onboard vendors and deals.
Yeah, there are 2 elements there and I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this too. On the one hand, you're building a 2-sided marketplace. That's probably one of the hardest things to do in VC because you're basically building 2 companies at one time. So I want to talk about that more, but the second thing is the aspect of the network effect in what you're doing. For anybody in here who's open to it or this particular element, in the people who are using it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are they to make sure that their buddy absolutely gets on the platform or product? What is the incentive for them to do the sales work for you? I mean, we've seen, it's not just social media companies, but most of the businesses that we use that are VC backed, a lot of them we're just like, yo, you got to use this. I heard you talking about the hello, what was the thing with the hi hello, right? Word of mouth right there, no sales dollars at all, but they're selling in a room in Charlotte. I don't even know where they're based.
Right.
So I think what he's getting at in terms of sales is what is the internal machine that's working that incentivizes customers to do the selling for you?
Yeah, because it's going to get and I understand what you're saying in terms of you got to get the more sales, and it is a high touch business,
Right.
and so that could have some reservation. And also, too, I want to pause for a second to let you know, even though we're giving some basic general advice, really the reality comes down to who's cutting the check.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, a lot of our stuff is that it will help you lead closer to getting the check, but really, if Bill Gates loved you because you sing and dance and he got the money, boom. I mean, yeah, right. So just generally speaking, if you get a check for somebody, but with funds, also too, I want to another pause. Got to understand the nature of the VC landscape of there is risk on their end. Similar to you guys raising a fund, the VCs raise a fund, they have a 10-year window. 10-year window, and they have to deploy capital, and they have to raise capital, deploy capital, and then exit these companies in a 10-year window, right? So the idea is these companies have to grow aggressively, so that way, because they understand that probably more than 3/4 of the fund ain't gonna really do anything. And so this is the reason why they ask a lot of these hard questions, try to dig deep, because if it is a high touch business, that doesn't mean it. You could grow fast at a high touch, but there are a lot of high touch that grow, but maybe not as aggressively as a traditional VC wants to see. So those are all things to consider. And I know I'm kind of segueing into like the almost general topic of, and I know you probably have some questions, but this one thought
No,
I
I'm done.
had
Go for
was the growing trend of VC. And my personal observation is that VC, I think less than probably like 10% of all companies, regardless of the raise, probably less than 20, I don't know the exact statistic, of all new companies really raise VC, because VC is really just a certain subset class. However, there's a market of a whole bunch of other companies out there that are juggernauts that have not raised VC. They may have raised, we all heard of like Pinky, right? She didn't raise no VC, she raised money, but that wasn't from a VC, right? And because I think she got to a certain stage where she raised money from a PE growth person. So my point is that, one thing I was thinking about for you too is that these are factors that VCs have to consider, especially if you niche down really heavily. That is a red flag. Red flag doesn't mean necessarily it's a bad business. It just may not be for the sweet spot of a VC if you niche a certain category down heavily, because that removes a lot of potential for market. We talked about it earlier, market potential. Like there's one company out of Philly, he focuses on black restaurants. Off the cuff, he shrunk the market share down. Right. Off the cuff. Doesn't mean he's not gonna have a great. I mean, he could probably do $10 million a year eventually, right? But it just, for the appetite of a VC, it kind of rules it out. Right. So I wanted to kind of say, so my point of what the trend, I believe there's a trend of newer companies that still need to raise capital, but are on more path for profitability. That want to grow the company, may need to raise money, but eventually want to self-sustain. That self-sustain can be at 7 figures, 8 figures, maybe even 9 figures. There's a company out of Delaware that I remember talking to them in the beginning. Who mentioned leveraging asset? Was that you? Leveraging. Well, it was like taking something that is there and then turning it into like an asset. I think something like that. So they do something simple as you put an ad on the side of a car.
Oh yeah.
Right, and they're out of Delaware. They were trying to raise money in the beginning, but now they did raise Angel. So that's another group. If you raise Angel, that's Angel money. That actually used to be the seed or pre-seed round years ago. Correct. There's flexibility with that. So even though we're telling you all these basic things, that's because VCs have to manage other people's money. Mm-hmm. Angels have their own checkbook. Yeah. So even though they still might traditionally invest in startups, they may waive some of those and say, look at yours, because that has some interest in there. But I think anyway, there's a movement trend. There's a moving trend of these other companies that are more niche focused to scale, and so there's a lot more people that want to invest in those companies. A lot of those companies on Shark Tank are fit in that category, right? They may not fit the bill of a traditional VC, but they are juggernauts or have the opportunity to be a decent sized company. But I will just say, entertain. I know here in North Carolina has angel groups. Entertain angel groups. There's a lot more flexibility in those.
May I pick
Oh,
back
yes.
on what you were saying? So I both forms, financial aid and then IP. And that's where an IP in exchange for equity, as he's already referenced. And again, not to say that you intended to do it, but I threw you a bone and you inadvertently catapulted it back to me. There's also federal funding that is
Yeah.
venture capital.
Yeah.
And so if you are not well informed about what is available through federal funding, which is often either a forgivable loan based on your productivity and your validity over years and justification, or it is altogether effectually a granted, it's granted money. But if you don't, and leveraging the environmental science aspect of it, and I think I alluded to that part, but making it valid, bringing on a scientist and actually making it valid as opposed to a facade of environmental sustainability, then it becomes a win-win situation, and that is correcting negative
But you
externalities.
guys are proving my point, exactly. Like,
But-
everything about compensation for staff, for her staff, my staff, anyone's staff is like, don't do it. That philosophically
No,
makes sense
not
up
for federal.
until.
Not for federal. For federal funding, that would not be a
No,
red
no, I
flag.
got
For me
I
as
got
an
that
angel
for federal.
investor, it would be a red
Right,
flag.
but that's what I'm saying. So VC, angel investor, you're like, hey, you
Well,
better
well,
do this shit by yourself, no staff, no team.
Well, no, so what I'm saying, there's stages to everything, and each stage counts for something. So at a certain stage, depending on your level of success, we may, yes, say boost you because we want to see how much traction you can build on your own,
Right.
because that also gives us confidence that, because sometimes some people, as happened before, where they believe money solves the problem.
Right.
Correct.
Money is, all it does is just magnify what either is good or bad.
Right.
So if I see that you by yourself or two people have built the business to X size, whatever that size is, right? Maybe 100 grand in revenue. Okay, and through that experience, and maybe one guy is a sales guy, through that experience, that can provide a bigger, what am I trying to say? A stronger case to add another layer to that, another sales guy.
Makes sense.
Same thing with technology. Sometimes it's on the technology side of like, yeah, we built it up, we have an MVP, we did this, we have X number of users, but now we're not able, we love the good problems where like we have so much demand, we're not able to keep up, right? Evidence of the, like users signing up and things breaking and all that type of stuff because the demand is just so hard. I need another a back-end engineer to help support the demand. That's something we can kind of get behind. But again, it's in stages, and so in each stage, your ask or your need is going to change. So sometimes it may be we don't want to hear about staff because we want to make sure you do have a good product market fit and proof of concept. Other times, especially when you say growth, we do want to hear about that. So it all depends on what stage, and we won't be able to figure it out now because it really requires diving up under the hood to really looking at all the stuff. But there's never really an exact answer other than based off your stage, that would determine. So I only made my assumption just working with a lot of other founders before that you were maybe in the earlier category, and so that's why I assume that you may have too much staff right now. Right, and again, I could be wrong with that. I'm just based off just my general knowledge.
And just go ahead.
And I'm trying to, so tidbit too, I want to make sure my questions are like broad sweep for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Not just being about this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what
So you had a question too, didn't you, Kimberly, from earlier? I don't know if you still have one, if it got answered. Okay.
Here's a question.
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
always comes
Yeah,
up.
go ahead.
How do you qualify what multiple you use for your valuation?
With multiple what?
Like, so I know that when these VCs come in, it's like your valuation is going to be based off of a 5 times or 10 times more. How do you get to that number? Like, is
Good
there
que-
like a
Good
list?
question. There's not really a great answer to that because trust me, there's a lot of them been wrong, and then what you hear the term down round, because meaning, AKA, we got it wrong.
Okay.
But to kind of give you some idea around that, there are a lot of metrics. It is an arts and a science. So you look at a lot of different comps in a similar category.
Right.
How much are they growing per month? and then you do your best guess of trying to set some kind of valuation around that. If I can speak, generally speaking, a lot of VCs have got it wrong over the years. You
What
know.
constitutes getting it wrong? Way overshooting or way undershooting?
Over.
They're always
Yeah. That's that. And honestly, I hate to say this, but I think because of the whole George Floyd thing, there was a lot of money kind of flooded the market, and that gave a lot of high valuations.
Yeah.
And the downside of it's great at the time, but when the smoke clears,
There wasn't a return on it.
yeah. And so now, there's a lady right now. I'm trying to do my best to help her out, but she's in a boat where she may have to shut her company down.
Why is that?
Ran out. I can't keep raising. And it's a matter of raised a lot and got a big valuation, but the traction is not keeping up with the raise. And that's sometimes the issue. And so, because I remember one of our deals, we had this was a Heavy Science. One of our partners was a former DuPont guy, and we thought it would be a nice big juggernaut because it was actually doing really well, attracting attention from other Fortune 500 companies as a strategic investor. But the gas started slowing down, and we got a really disrespectful return. We thought it was going to be like an IPO kind of thing, and the return was disrespectful. When I say disrespectful, it was an insult. It was an insult. It was one of those things. It was like you should have just kept it. You should have just kept it.
Can you talk about like the type of business it was, or no?
Well, I can generally speak about it, but it was well, I can't. I was gonna say the category, but the category has it in the name. It was a deep science a company. It wasn't like a biotech or anything like that. It was I'm trying to think what man, this was some years ago. This is probably like mid 2010s when this happened. But it was a Heavy Science. I just don't want to say.
Yeah.
If I say the categories, the name is easy because it has the category in the name all attached to
Well,
it.
here's what I'm mad at.
Okay.
Here's what I'm mad at. So there was
Beyond me.
a little bit of
Say it again.
I read a little bit of an article the other day where, so my problem is that we all know that there is no level playing field.
Yeah.
Like I was reading where some dudes raised like a few $1 million their seed round
Oh.
to teach people how to play pickleball.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So that right there, I have and you're 100% correct. And that right there, it's hurtful because when you try to give, I'm gonna just say the basic advice that really helps somebody, especially our people, you have some crap like that.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like
For me, it
he
says,
raised money because he just blinked his eye twice. You know what I mean? Like what?
and is it more important than saying, is it more important than saying, we partner with organizations that support women's social issues, like domestic violence, displaced families, like we do transportation for the Afghan families,
Yeah.
the Nepalese. So is that?
So I say do anything that can help drive the growth of the business,
Yeah.
whatever that might mean.
Yeah.
To her point, don't let those. Even you're gonna have those outliers.
Yeah.
I had there was a project I was working on, and I kind of canned that whole startup idea. But just give you to your point, had a similar idea, struggled. I mean, I have some background of managing money, investing in companies, and all this. This other joker off the street raised like $1 million. Like every time I talk to somebody, and granted, I'm not mad at them because I already knew the answer. I'm just trying to try my luck. They're like, oh, I want to see you get a deal first. I'm like, okay, no problem. Let me try that. This joker just raised $1 million off the cuff, off of an idea, off a napkin, which he basically almost just copied our same idea, and he looked like a different persuasion than us, and so there are those outliers,
Yeah.
and I don't have an answer for that, honestly.
If we get the same freedom.
Oh,
like,
well,
we don't
I'm
even get
sorry.
The same freedom to fail.
There is an outlier in a sense of that we as people who do have the means, who do have the ability to cut checks, do our part of being able, because that's the reason why I mentioned a huge market of companies that may not fit the bill of VC, but still can be invested in. right? That happens a lot. There's a concept of micro private equities. Essentially, it's private equity, but a smaller tier.
Yeah.
People can invest in companies. There's this one company that came across not too long ago. This is a franchising system. He had some people invest in him, right? That ain't no venture backable company, but it's a business that he raised capital and was able to pull capital from some people to invest to help him grow.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, good for you.
that's a-
Franchise, have you
that-
thought about that, franchise?
Yeah, we have thought about it, but there's a lot that goes into Abraham could probably, well, I don't know if you know franchise law, but there's a lot that
It's a
goes
lot.
into it.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point, so then you get with someone who can actually put you in a position to
Yeah.
actually provide you that type of, in return for equity,
Yeah.
provide you information.
Well, the problem is that for us, it's working capital, it's the runway. So like they talked about earlier, like being able to prove that you have a product market fit, or even a problem market fit. So we're still in those stages where it doesn't matter, investors say, hey, go get traction. We launched, we had over 2,000 signups in like a month and a half, and now it's like, well, where are your sales? And I'm like, dude, you told us to go get traction. Traction doesn't always equate to
Sales.
revenue, like we are a pre-revenue company, but it's just very difficult. Like I don't believe that we're VC ready yet, but what we need is we need people who understand that we need time, we need a longer runway to prove this out, and we don't, and I understand the nature of the business because, you know, we know how VCs work, but for a lot of our Black businesses, we always hit a brick wall because we don't have enough time.
Or you
I got a question,
wait,
I got a question for you
Yeah.
then. Why don't you do a monthly rideshare party? Hey everyone, I'm a cater luncheon and herb vodka, and I want you all to use my app to rideshare in, use my app to rideshare out, and this is make it a communal effort.
Listen, I show up at coffee shops and buy, I would rather spend $200 on gift cards for coffee. I show up at coffee, because I believe it's boots on the ground. I believe we have the same problem that Uber had over a decade ago. We have the same problem that DoorDash had, Uber. So we have to show up to where these are events and say, hey, I'll buy you coffee if you download my app and use my app. So we have to do like boots on the ground because we need quick conversions. Like I have my drivers show up logistically. It benefits us more to say, hey, logistically, there's an event going on in South End. Show up there, hang out. We'll pay you $20 an hour versus spending $1,000 on Facebook ads.
So respectfully, you're looking as though you are begging, and so when I just said what I said, again, you threw it back at me. What I'm saying to you is that I'm here, I came, and I fought to come into this space to make myself available. I am not just a scientist. That's why I said, I gave a quick resume, and I dwell in the business economics, and I'm damn good at it. And what I keep hearing is there's either mismanagement with, and this is not to be mean to you or mean to the next person, this is because I love us, and I wanna see us empowered. But if you have the right people on your team, and the investment is, you know, you've got this, this mutuality here, and we are working together, then, and you're actually saying, okay, we're gonna do this. Remember when I said coming from under the table, there's various versions of under the table. Right now, it sounds like you are floating, you're doing just enough, you're right there. And there's a way to actually scale, but you have to have that sufficient information, and you have to be open to that sufficient information, and then take that information and not necessarily keep, and it's okay to ask questions, that's not what I'm saying. Please hear my heart and hear my education and my experience. When I'm saying these things because at the end of the day, I'm also soon to be a licensed attorney. So I'm not going to sign the dotted line right now, but the point I'm making to you is that I'm saying I am willing. And for me, that is a huge statement. For me to be here and thankful for the opportunity to be here, but I actually fought to be here, if you will. So because I fought to be here, that should let you know that I am willing on a different level. But if you're not receiving what I'm saying, then I don't, and if this is the same, let's say for instance, so I see this as you're duplicating this in other spaces. And if that's the case, then what's happening is those individuals who are willing are just walking away because you've already shut the door several times, and I've tried to open it and I've tried to
so,
No, 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 I'm
and
saying,
so,
I'm not saying, I'm not saying negative.
We got 2 more sessions.
I will just say there are some, what, I will say that because of George Floyd, and a lot of you guys' problems are not, these are not new problems. These are a lot of problems out here. And there are some funds that I think, are trying to, like, there's one, they used to have a virtual, I don't know if they're doing it anymore, but I know they opened up in New York. And they actually, this one did another ride sharing company. They were focusing on low income. I don't know what you call it, but visiblehands.vc.
Yeah.
I actually, you heard them? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Now, so I was gonna actually say, especially depending on what stage you are, there are a lot more pitch competitions, and I'm sure
That's
you
how
were.
we built this company.
Okay, good. And the good part is that those are all great. Same thing for you. They're all, and you'll be great at pitching. So you'll rack them up. You'll rack them up. So just do a Google alert. Start up pitch competition. Start up whatever. Because you'll rack them up. Because some of those they vary in check size, but that can be a good part of your raise. And really, that's just. I don't want to cheat down pitch competitions, but sometimes it just has to be a good story with the evidence of traction,
Yes.
and you can win.
Afrotech.
All right.
Afrotech.
Yeah, but go even more nicher than that. So just as a tip for everybody, there's a gazillion. There's one up in Delaware. They already done it, but it's called Startup 302. So put that on your calendar for next year.
Yeah. and Black Ambition,
Startup
they
302.
have theirs.
There used to be one out in Maryland, Syracuse more. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they'll cut a check of like 10 to 50K. But it was like a small community. So this is why I said put that Google alert in, because you're not going to find a lot of these.
Right.
The only reason why that went out in, I know I'm saying the area wrong, Salisbury, Maryland, is because I was a mentor at another pitch competition at the university, and one of the winners mentioned that location. You ain't gonna find, but the fact that you're not gonna find that one just willy-nilly.
So I'm
Oh,
gonna
go
ask
ahead.
a general question.
Yeah,
Because the statement representation matters is a real thing, right?
yeah,
So 3 years ago, I would have never really put thought into creating a programs that would target our community, because at the
Correct.
time I was in the hamster wheel, like, where's the money? You know what I mean?
Correct.
Do you find yourself, either one of you, find yourself where it's like you're talking to minority businesses, women, black, brown, whatever it is, and you're like, man, I don't know if they would get an opportunity, but I could be the vessel to give them an opportunity. I'm not talking about me right now. I'm just talking about in general, because I find myself working harder to get our deals funded when I know someone is trying and they're so close. I find myself being much more personally involved in trying to get that deal funded than just another name on paper for someone who's done it 15 times and I'm just not the right one. Do you guys find yourself in a situation where you're like, man, as a minority, watching a minority business that isn't really checking the boxes but has potential to take a chance on, or is it really, do you stick to the dollars? It's about the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
wanna-
the whole business for the most part, I would say over 90% of my clients are black, and I've probably given away. I've probably given away, I don't even know how much in legal services by not billing people for different things and connecting them with investors. I mean, at first, when I first started, it was kind of, this vapid, acknowledgement that I could help, but now there are people who have cut checks for my clients strictly off of an introduction, following up with them. So I think it's a huge part of it, and that's one of the reasons I started the Diverse Tech Founders community and podcast, is because what do you do when the money doesn't show up? We still have social capital that we can leverage among ourselves, and there's a lot of stuff in this room right now that could be tapped, but what are the things that prevent us from actually receiving that from the people? And I'll say this too, because my dad is a preacher, very religious and all that, but he has me reading these books all the time. 2 things that I will share with you. One, if you go out searching for a friend, you're gonna be looking for a long time. But if you go out to be a friend, you won't have to look very far. And then the second thing is, right now they're studying Proverbs at my pop's church, but Solomon says to love criticism as much as adulation. And I think that's a tough thing to do, but at the same time, that's another value add that we can have in our community, because I don't know about for you, but VCs want to keep a good relationship with people, and they often may not be as straight up as he's been so far.
Yeah.
But to answer your question directly, yes, that's what I want my business to always be, is community first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And same, I've made introductions. You know, for example, I'm on a board of a fund. That's another reason why I'm saying a lot of these things, giving these tidbits, because I know what's needed. So it's like, hey, I need you to move your business like this so I can do this. You know what I mean? I don't want to say that because I don't want to use that. I don't want you to think.
Use that later, like, well, you
Yeah, exactly. You know, exactly. Like, so, that's why. Like, I'm on a board up in Philly of a seed fund, and we just on the way down here, we just approved another $250,000 to two companies. One's a female and one is a Black Brothers company. They're both consumer products. But my point is that like I'm trying to introduce them to a couple more. And I'm just joining the board, so I'm also learning the people too. My point is, I'm trying to learn a little bit more of like what their sweet spot is, and also I got to educate them on a few things too, because we got a couple gaps in there. But my point is that way I can roll and bring more people in. There's another seed. So this is another reason why. Two things, and I'm gonna shut up because I could talk a lot. Because who said this earlier about, you said you love law. That's how I am with business. I can make people's ear bleed when it comes to business. Two things. One, a lot of this general advice about VC should always be taken, whether you raise VC or not. Why? Because at the end of the road, the wealth is built on the exit.
That's right.
So a buyer, right, you know, similar to real estate, it's the same thing in business. We analyze, that's one word I'm trying to get into a little bit later on, is the word of private equity. But like I remember my friend during the pandemic, we were trying to buy a business. We were gonna do a nice little roll up, and I was able to get like 40% off the asking price. Why? Because they didn't have some of their things in order, and I leveraged that against them a little bit. So my point is, all these little nuggets you mentioned earlier about the IP and all that under the company. When a buyer comes, they ask that question, and little things can lower your valuation if you don't have all these little details together. So regardless if you raise VC or not, these are just good nuggets to have for whenever that one day you do want to exit, whether that's in 10 years, whether that's in 30, right? Who knows? But the point is to have those things in place, because it makes the company look great on paper, and it can count against you. The last thing is just to throw it out there too, let you know that it does exist. There's a I'm gonna call it a growth fund, not necessarily a VC fund. They may call it a VC fund, but it's a growth fund, meaning that they actually don't want to see any previous institutional funding in the company, meaning any VC funding per se in it. That's typically what they like. They like companies that come from banks, small business banks. But anyway, that they have a minority focus out of Mid-Atlantic region, and they cut checks from like 1 to 3 million, maybe even 5. I can't remember exactly, but they cut big checks, but at the same time, you got to meet their criteria, and one of their criteria, you got to have at least a minimum of $1 million in sales, right? So that's why I'm saying too is that there is a path of profitability. There's capital out there. You just almost got to match the need of the criteria for the people, you know, based off the need. So, but I am sharing at least one option out there, and you at least have a contact there. But I just need you to help me out to meet their criteria so I can easily make that introduction.
Have you
Okay.
built out like a matrix that says like, hey, business type, here is a point of contact, like that could potentially fund the business, whether it be a grant, whether it be debt, whether it be.
So,
Like, if you
well,
haven't had to.
So
if your
actually, good
business is
segue.
outside of that.
Shameless plug. It's not live yet, but that's actually part of my journey now is to do that. So I'm glad you said that. So because of what I experienced, a lot of VC. That's why I keep on talking about the plug of like path of profitability.
Yes.
Because I honestly feel most of our companies are more on path of profitability than traditional VC. Because the other thing too, once you take VC money, you could be fired from your own company.
Right.
You know what I mean? And because if you don't perform, right? You know, they may say, "Hey, great job, but we're gonna bring somebody else in," right? So my point is, I've realized just working with a lot of companies, there is a gap a funding gap, almost like I like to call like a food desert, kind of like a fund gap, capital desert. But there is capital out there because there are people out there that are willing to take those risks because they like you, and they like the business, and they can probably add some value in there. And so it's just a matter of trying to match. And I'm very good at dealing with. I'm really, really good at meeting people on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
And so I am trying to build a almost like a Match.com meet Shark Tank kind of thing. So I'm glad you said that. I probably should pay you for that nice little, because that was a good. I wasn't really advertising that because it's not really built yet, and but you at least helped me get that out there. Thank you.
I'd subscribe for it.
No, I appreciate it.
All right, guys, so we're gonna get,
Good job, man.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry we didn't get to really talk about it.
It's a long day, man.
Yeah.
Y'all asking some really good questions, but listen, we're gonna bulldoze our way, because
matter
I
what
wanna
we
make sure we get Chris, all this good information, because Chris is gonna be talking about that crowdfunding piece as well.
Yes.
And I know a lot of you probably need that piece. Chris has done a lot in that equity crowdfunding space. I've done a lot of crowdfunding myself. Like I said, I've been in Africa 9 times. I only paid for one of those trips. I got 8 of those trips crowdfunded. I taught at the University of Ghana at their Institute of African Studies. I taught in South Africa. I've done work in Kenya. I had all of that crowdfunded. It probably came back with more money in my